Stuck in the middle of a moment, can't crawl out of where you are. Only steps away, the world's okay, but you can't see that far. Stuck in the middle of a moment that's halfway to somewhere new. Can't go back, you're moving through.
Hey guys, so I hope you enjoyed the new intro. I decided to update it a little and put some new things on it, and of course I had to put Callie in it because she wasn't in the original one. Also, in the original one, all of my videos were up and down, so they were... I'm sorry, she's playing with her toy back here, so it hits on the ground and it sounds like a bomb going off. So, but anyway, a lot of the videos were up and down. They were not horizontal, so I fixed and made all the videos horizontal for the new ones so they fit the screen better. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope you all are going to enjoy the vlog today. I'm going to be talking about some public access or PA experiences that Little Bit and I have had. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. I'm going to kind of have an even split between the two. And there's also going to be some that are kind of, you know, in between. So not necessarily good, but they weren't bad either. So we'll just see. And some of them are like longer stories and some of them are just, you know, something someone said to me. So we're just gonna kind of go over some of those and I'm gonna break them down into sections. So yeah, here we go. Alright, so the first thing we're going to start with is some of the more negative experiences that I've had. First off, we're going to go through some access issues that I've had during public access. So yeah, this is going to kind of go over places that wouldn't allow me in or gave me a hard time. So we're going to kind of see, and I apologize if I kind of keep looking this direction. I have a list of details and stuff about each thing I'm talking about so I don't forget anything. But yeah, so first access issue I want to talk about is actually the first access issue I ever had with her. And the first one I had, my friend and I in Myrtle Beach were going to a hibachi buffet. And we walked in and the host never said anything to us. And so we walked in and she was taking us back to our table, and another lady that was a waitress, I don't know if she was a waitress or a manager or what she was, but she came over and started talking either Chinese or Japanese to the host. And the host turned back to us and was like, "Oh, do you mind sitting back in the back dining room?" And I was like, well, because the back dining room, there's 3 dining rooms, and if you sit all the way in the back dining room, you have to walk all the way through that dining room and then through 2 more dining rooms to get to the buffet. And I was like, you know, if at all possible, I would really appreciate just sitting where you were gonna sit us here in the front dining room. And she was like, well, you need to sit in the back because of the dog. And I was like, I mean, we can sit anywhere. That's kind of discriminatory to sit us someplace else because I have a service dog. And she didn't really say anything, and I was like, you know what, there's too many people in this dining room anyway, we'll just sit in the back dining room. So we went to the back and we sat down. The waitress came over and was like, okay, the dog's not going to the buffet, right? And I was like, well, yes, she's coming with me to the buffet. I can't just leave her here at the table. And she was like, no, the dog stays with her, and points to my friend. And I was like, no, she can come up with me. She's allowed to. And the lady just kind of looked at me, and my friend kind of interjected and was like, you know, the law is that they're allowed anywhere that the general public is allowed, so she's allowed up at the buffet. And I jumped in again, and I was like, it actually states in federal law that service dogs are allowed to accompany their handlers to self-service food counters. And I was like, I promise you, she does not try to eat the food. She doesn't jump up on the counter. Even if there's food on the ground, she knows not to touch it unless I give her permission to. And the lady was like, okay, and just kind of looked annoyed and walked away. And we didn't have any other issues that night except for a couple of the employees would come over, and I had her under my legs under the table. And some of the employees would come over like they were cleaning the table next to us and would lean down almost on their knees to look under the table at her. But other than that, it was fine. And I did have another experience there about a month later, but that has to do with another matter that I'm going to go over, so I'll go over that one when I get to it. The other access issue I've had, when I went to the Hollywood Wax Museum in Myrtle Beach, I went with my parents. They were in town visiting, and we decided we wanted to do something, and we couldn't do anything outside because it was raining and storming all day. It was a nasty day. So we decided, hey, we've never been, let's go to the Wax Museum. So we went, and we got up to the counter, and the lady looked at us, looked down a little bit, and was like, oh, you have a service dog? And I was like, yes, ma'am, I do. I have a service dog. And she was like, oh, well, I need to see its papers. And I was like, I'm sorry, what papers are you referring to? And she was like, oh, the papers certifying that she's a service animal. And I was like, well, actually, via the ADA law, there's no such thing as a certification or registration for service dogs. You can ask two questions, which are, is it a service dog, and what tasks is it trained to perform? And I told her, if my dog starts to act out or misbehaves or does something that's disrupting other people, you can by all means ask us to leave. But unless something like that happens, I can bring her anywhere with me. And the lady was like, okay, let me talk to my manager real quick. I'll be right back. So she went around the counter and was talking to, I guess, her manager or supervisor. And she comes back out with this huge smile on her face and was like, all right, how many tickets do you all need? And I was like, oh, just 3. And we never had an issue again after that. And it was actually really fun. I'll put some pictures in of us at the Wax Museum because we actually had a really good time. And I wasn't sure how Little Bit was going to act around the wax figures, but she actually did really well. I was impressed.
Creaking the tombstones quake, and the markers swinging blake. Happy haunts materialize, and we begin to evoke their lives. Grinning ghosts come out to socialize.
Okay, this next public access issue was actually a little more recent. This happened a couple weeks ago. I was in Florida visiting my grandmother, and Little Bit obviously came with me. This is the same trip that we were going to Disney. And my grandmother decided we were going to go to lunch somewhere. So we were like, oh, we haven't been to Joe's Crab Shack in a while. Let's go there, because we both really like it there. So we went, and we went to sit down, or we went in to get sat down, and the host was like, oh, how many? We were like, oh, 2, and I also have my service dog. And she was like, so I'm assuming outside seating, right? And I was like, no, because it was upwards of 100 degrees that day, and they didn't really have big umbrellas out at their tables. So I was like, no, we'd actually prefer inside if possible. And she was like, Well, let me check with a manager first, because she's a service dog, right? And I was like, yeah, she's a service dog. She helped me with my disabilities. And she was like, okay, because she's a service dog, it should be fine, but let me just go check real quick. And I was like, okay, go ahead. So she went and she came back and was like, would you mind if we sat you inside, but like at the door that goes outside? And I was like, yeah, that's fine as long as we're inside. And we ended up sitting in a booth, and like the booth was here, like the table's in between my hands, and these are the two booth seats. The door to the outside was like right behind the booth here. So, and I kind of understand what was going on because they just passed a bunch of laws in Florida because pets used to be allowed in bars and breweries, but then it became an issue with health codes and health violations. If you're going to allow pets in, you have to have like specific, I guess, paperwork and certifications done through the FDA and the health boards and all that. And a lot of places just don't want to pay to have that done, so they decided to just not allow pets altogether. They still allow service animals, but I can understand the confusion. Like, they just don't want to get in trouble. No, it's not right for them to, it's not right for them to try to force me to sit outside. But it's just, I do understand what the confusion was. So that's not an issue. But yeah, so that's really all of the access issues I've had, other than a couple times going in, people ask me, oh, is it a service animal? And I'm like, yes, it is. One place that was actually really nice, my grandmother came to visit me in Myrtle Beach, and she stayed at one of the local resorts that she had stayed at before, and they offered her like some type of coupon. It was like 50% off like a room or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I came to visit her with Little Bit, and we went to the front desk to get me a key to the room in case I wanted to come over or anything. I didn't have to, call her, make sure she was there and everything to get into the room. So we walked up, and the lady very hesitantly asked me, she was like, is that a service dog? And I was like, yes, ma'am, it's a service dog. And she was like, and, what? And it was funny because she was trying to find the right way to word it, and it ended up being the wrong way, but I understood she was trying to ask the two questions. But she was like, what does the dog do? And I was like, oh, she does diabetes alert and PTSD alert in response. And she was like, okay, and like took a big sigh of relief and was like perfectly fine and didn't ask any other questions from there. But it was kind of funny the way she was trying to word it. And I understand because, with everything going out on the news nowadays, with people that have fake service dogs, they go into places and they tell them, like, oh, you can't ask me anything, like, you're not allowed to ask me any questions about her, you can't ask about my like, the work that she does, and, I can understand how businesses can be scared to ask things like that. But yeah, so those are most of the public access issues I've had, really, like, major issues, so not too many, more than I'd like to have, but, it's okay, because we worked through it, we got it figured out. So next I want to go over, I love it, the way I worded it on my paper is rude people. So I have definitely had some rude people, and these are people that did not work in the establishments I was at. These are just other patrons. So, starting off, there was a lady once I had a little bit in Kroger. I had a little bit in Kroger. And, this lady walks up to me and was like, "It's so gross, you have a dog in here." I was like, I'm sorry, but, you know, she's my medical equipment, so I don't think you would say that about someone's wheelchair. So, that was just, it's kind of a short story, but that kind of happened. She just kind of scoffed and walked away. But, and then, another one, a guy actually came up to me and was like, she was like, excuse me, but there are people out there that actually need service dogs for disabilities. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't look whatever your idea of disabled is. And it was frustrating. I really got upset at that. I didn't say anything to him. I'm sorry, my allergies are very bad. I looked at him and I was like, well, sir, I am disabled and she helps me with my disabilities, and she has tasks that she's trained to specifically help with those disabilities. And I guess he wasn't expecting me to say that, because he just kind of like looked at me and his face went like so blank and stoic. And he was like, okay, and just walked away. Like it's nothing, and I don't understand. And then another lady, I mean, I don't necessarily think she was purposely trying to be rude, but I think she definitely came across that way. But we were walking through, where was it? I think we were at Ross. And the lady, we passed her in the aisle and she was looking at something in the aisle. She turns around and sees Little Bit and she was like, oh, man, I wish I could take my dog everywhere I go. And I was having a really bad day, and I'm usually not this snarky, but I was having a really rough day. I wasn't feeling well. I had worked an overnight shift and I was exhausted. And so I turned to her and I was like, ma'am, you can have everything that is wrong with me and you can take your dog anywhere. And she kind of looked at me and her face like changed. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean. And I was like, it's fine. Have a great day. And I just walked away. End of story. And obviously I've had other rude people. I've had people stare at me. I've had people look at me angry. But those are the ones that really have stuck out to me. So yeah. Service dog teams. Now, I am usually not one to fake spot. But there are some situations where you just know it is not a service dog. Especially when the owners admit it. So the first one is one that was actually in my more recent videos when we went to Tyson's Mall. We ran into a lady, which I stood corrected. I found out and did some research that Tyson's Mall is actually pet friendly to small dogs. Small dogs. So that dog was allowed to be there, but to me, if a place is pet friendly, that means it is pet friendly to dogs that are friendly. And that dog was not friendly, it was very aggressive. But that was one. Another one was actually one of the first times I ever ran into a fake. We were at Starbucks in Myrtle Beach. It was a Starbucks I'm very well known at. I went there pretty much every day before work and constantly to go work on schoolwork. So I went in like I normally do, and they have, because it's in Myrtle Beach and it gets so hot, they have like the shaded or the tinted windows. So you couldn't, if the sun was shining on it, you couldn't see inside, but from the inside you can see out. So I went to walk in with Little Bit like I usually do. She heels on my left. So I walked in to the door that was on the right because it's like the double doors that open. So I opened the one on the right. I walked in And before I knew it, I looked over to my left, and this huge black lab was lunging at her, and the lady had it on a flexi lead. And I got so freaked out because this dog actually jumped on Little Bit because I couldn't pull her out of the way in time. So it jumped on top of her, and she, knowing she can't be aggressive, she just laid there. And I felt so helpless because I was trying to get this dog off of her and I couldn't get it off. And luckily she didn't get bit. There was no skin broken. But the lady, like I said, had it on a flexi lead. So we walked around to the other end of the store where the bathrooms are and where the end of the line was. And this dog, the lady couldn't get the flexi lead to work. I don't know why. But it was stretching the leash out, like coming around the store to follow us. And the lady finally got it back to her. And she was sitting there for about 5 minutes going, "Sit, no boy, sit, no, sit down, sit." And the dog just wasn't listening. The dog was lunging and barking. And I was like, seriously? And they kept the dog in there for like 10 minutes. And the Starbucks employees weren't saying anything. So I was like, okay, not sure what to do. So they finally went and sat in the outside area, which dogs are allowed in the outside area. They're just not allowed, or pets are allowed, they're not allowed in the store. Service animals are allowed in the store. But I'm standing there, and I was really upset because I found out after everything had happened that she actually missed an alert because this dog was on top of her. And I posted a video talking about the incident on Facebook, and this one person, which I blocked now, this one person was like, "Well, I think it's your fault for training your dog to not be able to alert during distractions like that." And I was like, I'm sorry, another dog was literally on top of my dog. I'm sorry that she was distracted for a second. But anyway, oh, did I just break the chair? No, okay. But it was very upsetting because then she was reactive to dogs for a couple weeks, and I had to pull her out of PA, and she wasn't even going to work with me at that point because I was concerned if someone brought a dog in, and I was frustrated. So, but I worked with her very slowly. I had a friend that had a very well-mannered dog, and I had him bring his dog over, and we kind of very slowly worked at getting her back to where she needed to be for public access, and within 3 weeks she was back out. So that one was a really bad one. But I did end up talking to the lady that had the dog after the fact. It was actually a mother and daughter. And I was talking to the mother because the mother was the one that had the hold of the dog and was letting the dog run around the Starbucks and everything. And I looked at the lady and I was like, "Ma'am, I just want to let you know that because your dog was being disruptive in the store, it actually caused my dog to miss an alert, which is very dangerous for me because that's why I have her, to prevent having a seizure, which almost happened while I was inside." And then the younger girl, who was probably about my age at the time, about 18 or 19, and she kind of like leaned over and was like, "Excuse me, if you could talk to me, not my mother, it's my dog." And I was like, I kind of turned and looked at her and I was like, "Well, I just want you to understand that what you did was very dangerous, having your dog in there with it not being properly trained." And she was like, "Well, he's an ESA in training, so he's still learning." And I was like, well, just think about, really make sure that he's okay with other dogs and okay with public places before actually bringing him out to train in public places. And because the dog was like barking at people coming in the door, and like kids were going over trying to pet it, and it was jumping on him and barking, and it was just not a good experience overall. But what was the other one? Oh, Wegmans. I was here at Wegmans locally, and there was a lady that had a beagle, and it had a vest on, and it had one of the certified IDs on it, and the vest said Service Dog Registry of the United States, and I was like, okay, whatever. We walked by and the dog didn't even look at Little Bit, which I was happy with, but a couple minutes later I had to walk back to an aisle and I saw them in the produce section. The dog was actually had two paws up on the produce counter and was licking the vegetables. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that is not okay. But I didn't say anything. I just walked away because I just didn't want to deal with it that day. But what was the other one? A couple weeks ago, I went into Starbucks and there was a gentleman in a electric motorized wheelchair scooter thing. And he had a Chihuahua in like the front basket with no leash, no collar, nothing, and he was feeding it chocolate covered espresso beans. And it was an older dog. It looked like it was pretty much blind and couldn't hardly walk, and I was like, oh my God, why? So that was the other experience that was very interesting. But in terms of running into other dogs, that's really it. We have run into a couple other legitimate teams, which was really nice to, be able to walk by another dog that had a service dog vest on and not be attacked. So that was nice. I really appreciated that. In terms of positive things, I don't have as many positive things that really stood out to me. As much as the negative ones did. But I've had a lot of positive things happen to me. I don't want to make it seem like nothing positive has happened. But one of the best examples I can think of is at Disney. We had a lot of people at Disney. Of course we had some people staring, and we had the general comments of like, oh, look, a puppy, or oh, look, the dog's wearing boots, and all this stuff. And but we did have a lot of people that were like, oh, that's so great that they allow service dogs here, or oh, it's wonderful that like she brought boots to protect your dog's feet. And like a lot of people actually, instead of just being like, oh, look at the puppy wearing boots, so someone would be like, oh, she brought boots for the dog because you know how hot the pavement gets. And I was like, thank you for being nice. And it was really great. And I talked to another gentleman that I was in line with at one point, and he had a child with him, had really severe autism, and he was talking to me about like how he loved that I had a service dog, and was not trying to be intrusive, but he was asking me like what she does and what she is trained for, and I gladly told him because I knew he was just genuinely interested. So he was really nice. Another thing, not necessarily just at Disney, but just positive comments like to me about her. A lot of people get really surprised when I say that I trained her myself. Because a lot of times they're like, oh, where did you get her trained, or who trained her for you? And I was like, oh, well, I actually trained her myself. I taught her everything myself. I did an owner-based training. And they're always like, wow, I can't, that's amazing that you trained her to do that. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. But, I did have help from other people that have trained dogs before and trained their own service dogs. And they were like, well, that's still amazing that you can do that like from home, and that's just wonderful that you did that and that you have her. And those are some of the more positive comments that I get. Sadly, I can't really think of anything else like really positive that has happened. But I really think that was it. Because I can't think of anything else. But yeah, But like I said, I don't want to make it seem like nothing positive has ever happened, because it has, but it's not anything that's like stuck out of the normal for me, as much as like the negative stuff obviously did, because that really impacted, you know, her training and or my mental health. So yeah, but I believe that's it, and I should have a video probably next week. I probably won't have one out again this week. Reason being is my parents' dog is currently at the vet, and my parents had to go out of town for 2 days. So they're going to be back here soon, and I have to take care of their dog who isn't doing too well. She's 11, almost 12 years old, and she's not doing well. So I'm gonna hopefully spend most of my time taking care of her. I'm not gonna really have time to sit and film or anything until next week, when my parents get back. So I'm just gonna kind of leave it at that, and we will see what video I'm gonna do next week. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, I would love to hear them. Just put them in the comments below. Or you can message me on Instagram. I'll put the link to my Instagram account below. Or you can email me. I will put my email for my YouTube page down below as well. So I hope you all have a great weekend and have fun. But thank you so much again for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you later. Bye!